Hey folks, Kilt-Man here, Kilt-Man at your services. How are you all? We're doing very, very well. Now, even though this has been delayed by a couple of days of absolute frivolity and drunken abandonment, we're going to get around to it now. Shadow of the Vampire from the year 2000. Yes. Some of you know it, some of you might not know it. And I will just lay this out right now, right from the word go. Spoilers. I don't normally do that. I mean, most of you know that if I'm going to review a movie, I'm kind of normally go through it scene by scene, line by line, every single thing, and all the cut bits that should have been put back in there, and I really go to town on it. But sometimes I review films which not everyone knows, and Shadow of the Vampire, although I'm sure many of you do know it and have seen it, probably hate it, but some might love it, I don't know. But I did a little straw poll at the weekend, one of those little random things you do in the pub. There's people that I know are into the movies and do talk about the movies to me as well. And I said, I'm going to review Shadow of the Vampire. Pretty much every single person, all three of them, no, there was a lot more than that, went, what? What's that? Which one's that? One guy went, oh, I've seen that, yeah, one of Hammer's finest. No, it isn't. So I had to explain what the film was, and it kind of made me realise that really, a lot of people do not know this movie. So even though it got an Oscar nomination, which we'll come on to, and it is kind of revered by cineasts, and genre buffs and aficionados for a lot of great, good reasons. But it's also not that well known because of a lot of other reasons, that it's artsy, fartsy, pretentious, and it's not exactly a full-blooded, go for the throat, rip the jugular sort of horror film. It's not like that. It's a different kettle of fish altogether. So what is it then, Kilt-Man? What is it? Shadow of the Vampire is a film within a film. It is a fictional account of the making of perhaps one of the greatest vampire films ever made. Certainly one of the landmark vampire films, and one of the most influential and iconic. Yes, Nosferatu. 1922, silent, black and white classic. Or depending on what version you watch, it could be slightly sepia tinted, it could be blue tinted. There's a lot of different colour variations of it. With Max Schrek playing Nosferatu, Count Graf Orlok, who is Dracula to all intents and purposes, directed by Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau. And we'll discuss a lot more about this. But, I don't want to go too far into all the beginnings of all of this, because you'll know it. Nosferatu is an absolute unparalleled masterpiece, a symphony of terror, and with a leading man, Nosferatu himself, who, with his rodent rat-like features looking just like that there, his cadaverous appearance, his pointed ears, his bald pate, and that pinched countenance, looks totally unearthly, and is the stuff of nightmares, and a demigod of goth babes all around the world. And it is an iconic movie, but it is the story of Dracula. Now, Piranha Pictures, way back in the the German expressionist movement, kind of screwed up because they tried to get the rights, didn't get the rights to Bram Stoker's Dracula. So they changed the words of the title, they changed the character names, made them all German names, changed the locations, changed this and that and bits and bobs. And Mrs. Stoker, after Bram had departed, took them to court and sued their asses off, good style. And it was declared that every single print and negative of this movie should be found and destroyed. And 99% of them were. But luckily, in some little provinces, I think Italy was the place, I can't remember now, but they did find, a couple of copies. And from that, like the vampire himself, Nosferatu was reborn. He was resurrected and became a cult darling of arty-farty sort of shows and festivals in the UK and in Europe, and then in America as well. And it took on a whole new life, and it became revered, critically revered, as an absolute masterpiece, which it is, of course. So with that in mind, and we'll come on to the making of that movie as well, because this is what this film's about. This film is about Shadow of the Vampire. It's about the making of Nosferatu, but because Max Schrek, who plays Count Orlok, or Dracula, it should be, he looked so repellent and unearthly and weird and bizarre that people did think, where the hell did you get this guy from? Is he really a vampire? Is he? Is he? Because it's so freakish. Do you find someone that looks like that? What? Can't be real. And that only got fostered throughout generations of people discovering the movie and watching it. Like, no, he really was a vampire. And no, he wasn't. Max Schrek was actually quite not a bad looking fella, and only relatively young when he made this. But he was a theatrical star, and he did make a lot of movies as well. A lot of which have been subsequently lost. Not like been buried by Mrs. Stoker, but just and had a stake driven through them. No, it just been lost in time and that. And there is a rumor going around that maybe when Talkies came out, he fell from favour, and they kind of say, well, maybe his voice just didn't work for it. I don't know about that at all. And you'll find there's a lot of things, rumours, controversy surrounding Nosferatu, which this film, Shadow of the Vampire, doesn't really try to embrace, because it goes off on a different tangent, which we're coming on to. But this background, I think, is essential, which makes Nosferatu and the making of it so interesting and bizarre and fascinating. And there's lots of contested and argued over points about the people that made this movie, and it only adds to the mystique and the allure of this once taboo and forbidden movie, and it only adds. So anyway, American but Lebanese born director Elias Mahaj, I think his name is pronounced, had done a film called Begotten, a black and white, and by the way, I've not seen it, but I've heard it's silent. Does that make any sense? I've heard it's silent. He made this movie, and it's about heaven and earth and hell, and there's a lot of weirdness in it. It's a very absurd sort of movie, but also very thought-provoking and taboo-breaking. Apparently, I haven't seen it. But this film that he made, Werner Herzog revered it. Werner Herzog, German director, who made the 79 remake of Nosferatu with Klaus Kinski. The connections. Oh, you see, he revered it, and Patricia Arquette, who was then married to Nicolas Cage. Yeah, Nick Cage. Who loves old black and white movies and silent movies and very out there, auteur, crazy, weird movies. She got a video cassette of that movie, Begotten, and showed it to Nick Cage and said, look, this guy's really good. You should do something with this guy. Nick Cage has a producing company called Saturn Films or Saturn Pictures, and he, with his partner, approached Elias Mahaj. So we can maybe work together. Have you got anything in mind? And there was something in mind, with a script written by what's his name? Stephen Katz. Notes there. There'll be a lot of names coming up here. Stephen Katz had written a script about the making of the film Nosferatu, and the conceit is this. So let's get on to the main point of it. This is a film, Shadow of the Vampire is a film about F.W. Murnau, the director of Nosferatu, making the film Nosferatu, and the problems that ensued. Albeit, the problems in real life were with the financiers and the fact that he was going to get his ass sued right off, and locations and difficulties and all this kind of usual filmmaking, stuff that takes place. But the conceit here, which is fabulous when you think about it, and it plays into what everyone thought at the time when the film was released, that Max Schrek, who is this Max Schrek? He is a vampire. And that's the point of the film. The story of Shadow the Vampire, F.W. Murnau, played by John Malkovich, awesomely as well, hires a real-life vampire. Max Schrek is a vampire. He's gone out to scout for locations for this movie, which is written and devised by another guy, which we're going to come on to quite heavily. And he finds in an old monastery, the ruins of an old monastery, a real-life vampire. Max Schrek, played in this film exquisitely, fantastically, and bizarrely, and yet so appropriately, by Willem Dafoe. Oh my God. If anyone was actually born to play Count Graf Orlok, Nosferatu, it is Willem Dafoe. He has the face of a gargoyle. And that sounds awful, and I do love Willem Dafoe. I mean, his Sergeant Elias is still, from Platoon, is still one of the most iconic figures that I have, which haunts me forever. And he's been great in everything. Of course, he played the Green Goblin in Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire for Sam Raimi. But the big mistake they made was putting that bloody mask on him. Just put makeup on him. He's got that nose, he's got that face, that grin, he's got those eyes. He's perfect. So he's perfect for that guy, for Nosferatu. So in this film, he plays Max Schrek. F.W. Murnau, John Malkovich, has found him and said, look, I'm making this picture, and it's Dracula, but we're changing all the names, and we're making it, I want this to be the most perfect film. I want it to be so indelible and so realistic that it'll just destroy everybody. They'll remember it forever. And I want you to play it because you are a vampire. So he makes a pact with Max Schrek, and he says that, look, Greta, who is the woman at the end of the original movie Nosferatu, she's the Jonathan Harker, or Hutter as he's called in it. It's his wife, which, of course, Dracula and Orlok falls in love with a locket picture of this woman. He's an old man, he wants to go to the new world. It's the same story as Dracula. He wants to buy property in a new civilized world, away from his old gothic monstrosity, and be surrounded by life and vitality. That's what he wants. It's the exact same story as Dracula, but he sees the locket of Hutter, or Harker's wife to be, and he falls in love with her. So, and in the film, she's played Greta. The actress Greta is played by Catherine McCormack from Braveheart, wonderfully as well. And Murnau makes his pact with him. Look, if you deliver, you play the part of an actor playing a vampire. Because you're a vampire, you're going to give the realism that it needs. I will promise you this. You give me the performance of your undead lifetime. You can have her at the end of the movie. She's yours. Suck her blood and all that. And of course, the story of the film is that Willem Dafoe's Max Schrek does fall in love with this woman. He does want her, and so art mimicking life, mimicking art, mimicking that. It's a Pandora's box. It's a kaleidoscope of what Murnau went through to make the movie in the first place, and in this context, what Murnau has to go through with a real life vampire working for him, who he can't really trust. Because that's the point of the film. As if, this rat-faced, wretched bastard, from beyond the grave, is going to just toe the line. It foreshadows the diva attitude of certain stars in movies and Hollywood and whatever, who demand more and more and more. I'm bigger than this, I'm better than this, you owe me. I don't know you, I just do 2 seconds of footage and like they should be happy with that. I want my ship, my yacht, my whatever, you know. And that's what Max Schrek becomes, a fucking diva. And he is a nightmare because, you know, he's a vampire. He gets hungry. So pretty much from day one, they arrive at this fabulous location. And Eddie Izzard, the great Eddie Izzard, plays the Jonathan Harker or Hutter character who goes to Castle Dracula or Count Graf Orlok's place to seal the deal, to buy the property, blah, blah, blah. And of course, in this version, as in Nosferatu, he's buying a property next door to Hutter, you know. So his wife's right there, and like, ooh, dearie me, you know, should have seen that one coming. And Hutter will be incarcerated in Castle Dracula, Castle Orlok. Discover the fact that, you know, this guy is a vampire, but he will make his way back. And anyway, you know, and the end of Nosferatu is, you know, the shadow on the wall and all that creeping up, and clutches the hearts of, you know, the woman whose name I've forgotten now, the actual the wife, in whichever version, does this, tries to put a bite on it, because the idea of Nosferatu is one of the legends that they got told is that, you know, only a woman can defeat a vampire by delaying him long enough till the dawn rises and the rays of the sunshine will destroy him. So thereby sacrificing herself to do this thing, to see him off. And that's what happens at the end of Nosferatu, the original movie. And this is what they're gearing up for this movie as well. So, anyway. I know it sounds crazy, and I probably could have put it in a much simpler fashion, but you know what I'm like. I'm going to talk around and through and then underneath and over the top of all the valid points. Hopefully it'll all coalesce at the end. But Shadow the Vampire is a tremendous movie of one guy's fascination with Murnau and with filmmaking, with old-fashioned classical filmmaking, the dawn of this technology, the black and white cameras, silent movies, and how they directed these people at the time. So it is an arty-farty film. I can't get around that. I can't, and I don't even know why I'm trying to say, oh, I can't get around it. Shouldn't be an issue. The film is arty, but it does stay on the right side of being pretentious. It's a slight film. So I'm going to say right now, don't go into this film expecting, you know, shock scares and set pieces and gore aplenty, because you're not going to get that. You will get death, you will get killings, but it's not dealt with in any of the conventional fashions that you think of in a vampire movie. And but it is an excellent exercise in dissecting how a guy at that time, Murnau was openly homosexual in a time when that was not exactly looked upon fondly. He employed, apparently, he would employ a lot of his crew, his cast would be gay as well, from what I've heard. There's a lot of things which you hear about Murnau which is contested these days. There's a lot of people saying that he wasn't gay at all. I don't believe that for a minute, because there's just too much incontrovertible evidence to say that he was. And he ended pretty badly as well. And this is contested. He died fairly young in Hollywood, in LA. He had a 14 or 15-year-old Filipino valet who was a chauffeur for him. And on a particular coastal road, the official story is that they swerved to avoid an oncoming truck, and they overturned, and Murnau was thrown out of the vehicle, but smashed his head wide open and died the next day from that head injury. Everybody else in that car survived. But the version which many film critics have talked about and I've read about and this is the version I kind of knew from many years ago, was that he was actually performing oral sex on this young Filipino chauffeur valet who was driving the car, and that's why they crashed. Oops. Only the great Greta Garbo stood by him, had a death mask made of Murnau, which she kept on her desk, to her dying day. So there's a lot of intrigue and stuff which only makes all the stories, the combined stories, even more fascinating. And now the guy that came up with the idea for making Nosferatu, another German, they're all German, what's his name? Alban Grau. Oh, God. I've been thinking about this guy all day and I can't believe I forgot his surname then. This is what happens to you. Alban Grau was an esoteric, an occultist. He was hobnobbing with the great beast himself, Aleister Crowley, and many other esoteric groups. They had a massive split up as well. They all met together to try and formulate their ideas and plans and all this, but they all had big disagreements and all went their own way. Then they all leave Germany and then come back to Germany. It was all crazy. But Alban Grau had served, like Murnau in the First World War. Murnau was a pilot who crashed his plane a good couple of times. But Grau was a foot soldier and was in Serbia. And they were him and his platoon were given the task of delousing the locals because there was a massive sort of infection going on. So they were scissoring everybody's hair down to the wood, and they were in this bivvy overnight, and a local farmer, someone mentioned vampires. One of his own platoon said, vampires chase us everywhere, and they were all kind of laughing, but it was spooky where they were. He wrote copiously about this. This is Alban Grau, and this other guy who was a peasant from that area said, you shouldn't joke about these things. My father was a vampire. And they're like, what? And he explained about his father dying and then not having the benediction of a priest at the time, and then was seen, around the town, and wherever he went, people were dying. And, this is Serbs, and he said, well, actually, I'm from Romania, and, we massively believe. That's where the word Nosferatu comes from. Nosferatu is a Romanian title, a name meaning the undead. But it's not in any of the English languages at all. And it's only known in Romania, but the name obviously travelled. And so he tells about this Nosferatu story about his father. And they lay in wait. They open up the grave where he'd been buried. The body wasn't there, so they lay in wait to return the next day. Found him, drove a stake into his heart, and then burnt the body and scattered the ashes. And he said, if you don't believe me, I carried the official documentation, and he showed them, the official. And I've seen supposed copies of this, writing about what genuinely happened, and they're all like, oh my God. So a very unnerving night was spent, but that was the seed in Alban Grau's mind. Vampires. I can work with this. And being an occultist as well, he totally believed in all this kind of thing. So when he and Murnau had this company, Prana Films, which was doomed because of the whole Mrs. Stoker controversy, which they brought on themselves. They really did. They didn't get the rights to it and then proceeded anyway. So I don't know what they thought was going to happen. And the thing about it is just changing the names and the settings and the locations and making it all German, all very Germanic. And it's all well and good people saying the reason they did that wasn't to try and disguise the fact. It was because they were selling the film to the Germans. So it had to be German. Make sure Germans understood what was going on. No, they were just trying to get away with it because it actually bloody says as well in the credits, freely adapted from Bram Stoker's Dracula. So they're not exactly trying to get away with it anyway. They're pretty much saying right from the word go, yeah, this is our version of Dracula. But we've changed some things to try and get away with it. Hopefully. Please. Oh shit, no we didn't. Ah, damn. And but the film became magisterial and a pure historical icon of cinema. So, but Alban Grau, being this esoteric occultist, he was the prime mover and shaker behind the original Nosferatu. He designed all the costumes. He designed the staging. He did storyboards for the movie as well. So like, you know, Nosferatu rising up and there's bits on the ship, but he comes out the hold and all that. He devised all that, and the costumes. He did all this, and also he would write runic symbols, occult symbols, esoteric designs and slogans, and he'd bedeck the sets with all this kind of stuff. So he had a huge part to play. He was the driving force behind it. Murnau was the German expressionistic visionary you can have, but he's working from, well, two people, Bram Stoker and Alban Grau. So, with all this in mind, Marash, Lebanese, American filmmaker. Remember we talked about this film I'm trying to review? But all this background is perhaps necessary. A lot of people said, I know Marash said when the film got released, he said, you know, you don't need to know about Nosferatu. You can watch this film, you know, quite freely. You know, enter freely and of your own free will, and leave some of the happiness that you bring. No, actually, I think it doesn't work that well unless you know what the backstory is to Nosferatu, because the film otherwise is a slight, abstract, dreamy, surreal exercise in plumbing the depths of a movie-making artiste who is completely driven and single-minded to the expense of everybody else, and how art becomes not only, well, it begins as science, becomes an art, and then becomes, you know, fatality, basically. A wanton dream. And it is very, there's a lot of high concept stuff running through Shadow of the Vampire, exemplified by John Malkovich as F.W. Murnau, the filmmaker. A lot of the backstory, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff with the financiers, it gets mentioned, but you don't really see any of that. You have a small body of main characters headed up by John Malkovich and Willem Dafoe, who is extraordinary. Now, he got an Oscar nomination for this. He didn't win. Benicio del Toro won for Traffic. Am I right? Something like that, anyway. But Willem Dafoe is unbelievably good, with a very strange script, a lot of which you kind of like, what the hell is he talking about here? Now, in the film, within a film, Max Schrek, a real-life vampire in this context. Only Murnau knows that. He tells everybody else, no, this guy, I found this guy, he's a method actor, and you'll never see him during the day. He's living the life of a vampire. You will only see him at night time when we film, and he'll never be out of makeup and never be out of character. And he is a genuinely terrifying, you know, character. Looks unbelievable, as I say, and it's only a very small makeup appliance because Willem Dafoe's face has got it anyway. So it's like a two-piece appliance. The nose is extended, you know, the ears are extended. You know, he's got the head's been shaved and all that, but the chin's been made more pointy. But he has these wicked long claws and talons, and the same tunic that, you know, the real Max Schrek wore as Nosferatu. And they capture all the imagery that you see in the original movie. And even though the film is in colour and with sound, Shadow of the Vampire, because they bought the rights to the original Nosferatu, Nick Cage and his business partner and Saturn Pictures, they bought the rights to Nosferatu, so they could actually use bits of Nosferatu, and they capture all the iris dissolves and expansions and all the iconic shots. They do it. You see them filming those, but you'll also see into the original stuff from the original 1922 classic movie, which is great. So the marriage of the two films really works superbly, and it does look inseparable. They look like the same sort of movie. They just gel so well. The camera work in this movie is also really, really good. A lot of it is very sort of stage bound, and you're not in many locations at all, but you've got lots of travelling camera where the cast will go through a door into a room, but the camera will then go through the wall to follow them and back again. And it does that a few times. Now, I like that kind of thing. It can look hokey, it can look stupid, but this, it seems to work because it becomes very involving, very flowing, very fluid, and I do love it. You've got the great Carrie Elwes from Princess Bride and Glory and many others, and who plays, because Nosferatu, Max Schrek, puts the bite on the main cameraman on day one, reduces him to a coma. Bloody great that, innit? You know, and because he can't control himself, he needs to feed. So it's all well and good, like, you know, Murnau coming down to the catacombs where he's staying beneath all of the film sets and all that, like, and feeding him stuff, you know, like rodents and what have you. And maybe he pluck a bat from thin air and feast upon that, which you do see as well. But you know, he wants to eat properly. You know, why have the crap from, you know, Burger King when you can have KFC? You know, that was a bit of a friggin' vampire thing there. But I should have put the glove on, shouldn't I, really, to do that? Now, so he's going to put the bite on people, so they need a new cameraman. So in comes, and this is Carrie Elwes playing the real life Warner, who's he's another fighter ace, a heroic guy, and he comes flying in his own little biplane and takes over. But you've also got in there Udo Kier playing Albin Grau, the guy I said before, the esoteric guy who knew about Aleister Crowley, who heard about vampires and wanted to do this. He's the driving force behind this. He's not as driving in the movie version, in Shadow of the Vampire, as he was in real life. But, you know, it's the way it's been worked out. But it's Udo Kier, who played Dracula for Neil Morrissey. He played Frankenstein for Neil Morrissey, in Flesh for Frankenstein, Blood for Dracula. And he's been in 220 movies at least, and many of them have been vampire movies. And Udo Kier, John Malkovich, Eddie Izzard, they're gay. You know, so Maraj, the filmmaker, has done what they all said Murnau had done and surrounded himself with gay people. So, and he's done the same thing for this movie. Eddie Izzard is fantastic. I would say he's not used enough, really. But he's in the pivotal scenes for the main memorable bits of Hutter meeting meeting Count Orlok and discovering him in his coffin with the face coming through the hole and staring and all that stuff. And he's wonderful. He plays it perfectly, and they do some seamless sort of dissolves from the original film. And I forget the guy's name that played Hutter. I could look for it, but it's in fine print, so I'm not going to bother. Just take my word for it. But it's all very theatrical and you know, because it's all old school, silent movie style. And Eddie Izzard captures that really, really well, and he's brilliant at it. And then you'll go from like the real life footage to Eddie Izzard and back again. So you'll lap dissolve from black and white grainy to colour, and then filming it. Works really, really well, you know. And also what works superbly is it's a silent film. So you've got to remember that the director would actually be speaking to the cast. Like, do this. Now, where Hutter cuts his own thumb when he's cutting the bread, and Count Orlok goes, you know, for the blood, you know. And it's in every Dracula version, or variations of, you know, of this particular scene. You've got Malkovich saying, like, now you're cutting deeper, you're cutting more, you're cutting deeper, and he's seeing this, and they're filming, they all crank, there's a film and all this, and like, you're cut deeper, and he's like, oh, Jesus, God, and then obviously Willem Dafoe's Nosferatu goes for this, like, and they're like, Jesus, he's going for this, God, you're acting a bit much there, aren't you? And then as they're all trying to calm down, he's took out the cameraman and drained him to the point of being in almost a coma, and which is why they have to bring the new guy in. But you've got this thing where Murnau or Malkovich is directing people verbally. Now do this, now go there. Now you're looking really frightened, you're looking to... and it works. It really, really works. I've heard people saying, oh, the one thing about the film is the hello German accents. They sound great to me. They sound absolutely great to me. The thing about having Americans or British playing Germans and putting on that Germanic accent is that that's what they sound. That's how we sound. It's not like, they're doing hello. Hello, hello, folks, was an 80s British sitcom set in occupied France. And they had, the Parisians who were the sort of resistance. It was a comedy. But you had the Germans who were all like Mittel-speaking Germans, yes, your papers, please, and all this kind of shit. Like, well, yeah, they sound like that. But you've got Udo Kier there, who is German. He doesn't sound any different. That's what they sound like. So it works perfectly. But you've got Malkovich with that. I can't even pretend to do John Malkovich's accent, but his voice. But you know what he sounds like, and that is just he's being John Malkovich, isn't he? And he's great. I think he's great in this. When he, after day one of filming, when he's like, you've took out my cameraman. He goes, you monster! Because he is a monster. You monster. You're not meant to be killing my crew. And he's like, well, maybe I can just take the script girl. Maybe the script girl. And all this. No, you can't. Don't. This was the deal. Don't touch my people. Leave them alone. I've promised you, you're going to get Greta, Catherine McCormack, playing the heroine at the end of the movie. He's promised his vampire hair throat. Fucking hell, people. So you actually, if you think about it as well, art imitating life, imitating art, imitating life, and literature, and also a snuff movie, because that's what they're making. They're making a snuff movie. So, and I say it does work. The set direction, set design, and the art direction are impeccable. You have, because he's being a diva, the Max Schrek said, I'm not, because one location they're going to is on an island, and because that's meant to be the finale. It's all going to be an island. And he said, well, look, I don't think we need the boat. And he's already been bollocked for attacking and killing several crew members. And Malkovich, man, I was like, what? I've got a dozen scenes on that boat. How can you not have the boat? I will not sail. But the final location is on an island. You can only get there by the sea. And he's like, I do not sail. Well, how am I going to get you there? Oh, okay, if you don't want to do it, I'll use a double and we'll work around it. You can do all your scenes here and I'll use a double. No close-ups. Which is implying that Max Schrek, actually the vampire, wants this to be his sort of, his big Schutzpah, his big moment. And this is where it falls down a little bit, because why the hell does the vampire want have any of this? He just wants a woman at the end of it and a good juicy throat. That's all he wants. He doesn't want fame. He does get queried by the writer of Shadow of Nosferatu in this version, the writer and Udo Kier, Albin Grau, the producer, sit outside. Because what they've done, because Schrek won't sail out there, they build a ship, the Demeter. Yes, I did a video on all this. And they build it outside of the castle, Orlok's castle. And they build it there, so they're going to film all the scenes on that, just to accommodate him. And so you've got Albin Grau, Udo Kier, and the writer, played by someone else, sitting there, and they're having a snack. And Nosferatu appears there, but these guys still think he's just an actor, and they start taking the piss a little bit. So tell me, when did you become a vampire then? This is Udo Kier, the great Udo Kier speaking to him, and Willem Dafoe's sort of I don't remember. Oh come on, you must remember. When did it happen? How did it happen? Were you ever human? There was a woman. There's always a woman. And so Dracula. Have you read Dracula? I found it very sad. Why do you find it sad? This man who was once the leader of armies, and he lives alone in a house, and he has no servants. When Harker arrives, he doesn't know how to. He has to make the meal for him himself. How would he remember? I found it very sad. You're like, is that what you took from Dracula? That? You know what I mean? But it's clever in a way because he is the real life Dracula. And during that moment, that's when the bat flies by and he goes, which is weird because they just kind of look at him like, but accept it. That same night, he kills someone else on that big fake ship that they've built there. But the film also has the wonderful imagery of all the people making the film, like the director, the cameraman, all the crew. They're dressed in white laboratory suits, like tunics, and they've got goggles on, so they look like mad professors. And during some of the filming and the way they're positioned, Mirage, who directed Shadow of the Vampire, he's done it deliberately, so they mimic, the scientists looking at sort of, the atomic bombs going off. They're all in their lab coats and their goggles are standing there. And he said it's because a lot of the film used back in those days, particles would come off and it was poisonous, or they believed it to be poisonous. So they put these lab coats on to protect themselves and these goggles to protect their eyes. But it does make a very striking sort of image when there's science there, the laboratory, the people who mess around, like look at Universal movies and from 1950s onwards, like man split the atom and man messes around and creates mutants and monsters and all sorts. You've got them there with a real life monster, but they're creating a monster which is cinema as well, which is again one of the themes about the movie is cinema itself becomes its own monster. It changes life. The generations from the 1900 onwards which discovered film, started making movies, taking things off the stage and putting them on to a finalized copy which can be watched again and again and again, generation after generation. It's creating everlasting life. So the parallels between the vampire and movies themselves, that's what Mirage is trying to get to. Whether you see it that way or not, I don't know. Because what the film he does come up with is, it's slight. I don't mean that in a bad way, a disparaging way. It's the potential of a film where you're going to have, look, this is a real life movie, and we're going to do a fictionalized account of it. But we're going to say that Nosferatu really was a vampire. Straight away, you're like, wow, that's fucking amazing. Let's see that. But the amount of potential is in your head. That doesn't come across in the movie. The movie is very sort of, it dances around these things. It has these highbrow concepts, some of which really are frustratingly not met, but they're enough to tantalize. This whole thing about art and like creating art becoming a science. We need to do this, we can create and it will last forever, but we need to have this, and the whole the crank, which is wonderful. It's a wonderful little moment, which is you hear this constantly. And during that big finale, which is the final scene of Nosferatu, the original movie, where the poor girl is going to sacrifice herself. She's got a stake beside it as well. And she's going to lure him and keep him there until the cock crows and it's too late and the sun rises. Well, in the movie, when they realise, look, this has gone too far. And finally, Myrno has to confess to Albin Grau, Udo Kier, and his writers. And Werner Cary-Elwes, the heroic sort of cinematographer. Look, this guy's a real vampire. I'm sorry, I don't know why I did this. This is insane, but I wanted it to be the most real. And I'm like, well, how did you get him? Well, I promised him the neck of, Greta, Catherine McCormack. And they're like, what? You promised him that? So they now realise, shit. So the people who were dying and getting, going into comas, he was doing it. He really is a vampire. Fucking idiot, So we're all in danger. And then, oh, by the way, they are now on this island. There's another narrative flaw that Mirage, I don't know why, but I will not sail. You can fly me there. Now, really speaking, I thought, the first time I saw this, I'll fly. I'll become a bat and I'll fly. No. Quite clearly, they do fly Max Schrek there because they end up on this island and they're sealed in. The planes have got no fuel left, so they're trapped there with a real-life vampire. But you've not seen how he got there. How did they transport him to this island when he can, he's got to be... It doesn't work. He needs his own caskets. He needs his own air. He's got to sleep during the day. Well, sleep in darkness, put it that way. During the daylight hours. It just doesn't... You don't see that take place. It doesn't happen. So you kind of like... Are we still... Because you built a mock-up of the boat, and yet you clearly see the footage from the original Nosferatu, where the boat, the Demeter, is at sea. And you've got footage of the guy chopping open the casket and the rats coming out. You've got all that. And then you've got like Nosferatu from the original and Willem Dafoe in this version coming up like that and then coming out of the hold. So you've got all that going on there. But you don't see how he got there to the island. It doesn't make any sense. And it's things like that which you kind of go, I'm enjoying this, but that doesn't work. How did you do that? And what? So you've got a lot of scenes which are frustratingly enticing and intoxicating and wonderfully atmospheric, and yet really don't deliver the goods that you kind of want and kind of expect. They're building up to things, don't get them. But that finale is great because what happens is, right, we've got to finish this film tonight, and it's the final scene. But how are we going to survive? Well, we must finish it, and we'll kill him tonight. We'll kill him, and we'll use daylight. So they've got a trap. The trap is that they literally are going to keep him in this room, this purpose-built look set. And out the windows, you've got the old painted on Bavarian, Bismarckian rooftops and German expressionism, sort of Art Deco behind. So you've got all that there. So they've recreated that for the finale of Nosferatu. But they've got this trap, so once he's in there, he's locked in, and then they'll raise these trap doors and the sunlight's going to come through. But unbeknownst to them, Nosferatu himself has crept in there the night before and sussed out that it's a trap. And he's realised what's going on. So you kind of think, oh, there's going to be a great finale, this. But Mirage doesn't play it out like that. He's still got this singular artsy-fartsy sort of vision he's going to play around with. So it's not as exciting as you want it to be, but it still is good. And it reenacts what happens. And Captain McCormack does get the bite put on it because he can't control himself. But then, he goes mad and no, you thought you could trap me. You tricked me. This is Willem Dafoe. He's great. That sinister face of his, that gargoyle face. Now trapped within the Nosferatu visage. And Cary Elwes, no, you're a monster. He pulls out a Luger and pumps bullets into pow, 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 pow. It's like, you fool. He grabs Cary Elwes, snaps his neck, drops him. Murno's filming the whole thing. He's gone completely mad. He doesn't care. This is even better than I ever imagined. He's killing everybody now. And then he says to Udo Kier, go on, stab him, use the stake, stab him. So Udo Kier goes for, as Albin Grau goes forward. But he gets strangled and dropped. But Murno tricks Nosferatu. So he's just filming constantly, just I need you back on your spot, back on your mark, because if it doesn't exist within the frame, then it doesn't exist at all. And he's tricking Nosferatu into I still want this light. And there's lots of finger play with them great big long talons. There's lots of that going on. Willem Dafoe really has a great time doing a lot of this sort of stuff and doing all the mannerisms with the crooked arms and stuff and walking off in a strange fashion, strange postures, very thin, very angular, very insectoid. Works great. So he will trap him. And outside, because they've heard gunshots, the rest of the crew smashing their way in. And because Nosferatu's tricked them by snapping some of these little cords, which are going to drop or raise these doors to let the sunlight in. He's already done that. Although you don't really see that happen, but you kind of glean that that's what he's done. And they break open and force these things up. And like, the sunlight gets him. And he is frozen. As he is in the original movie. And it's great. But they all come in there and they see, hang on, she's dead. Cameraman's dead. Producer's dead. He's just disappeared. What the hell? You know. What happened here? And they're all staring at Myrno. And it is a strange film, folks. I know. And I probably haven't really done it justice enough. But it is a slight film. I keep on saying this. It's a slight film. It's a film which is built around a singular concept, which is a dynamite idea that he really was a vampire. That works great. But they don't do enough with that idea that perhaps you think they ought to. But I still love this movie. A lot of people put it in the same bracket as Gods and Monsters. Gandalf playing James Whale, the father of Frankenstein, as in Frankenstein, the original movie for Universal, and then Bride of Frankenstein. Another gay man as well, and who was also surrounded by a lot of gay crew and technicians and actors. So, there's definitely this thing, and you can say it's a very theatrical sort of bent, but, it is what it is, and these films are magnificent. Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein are absolutely two of the greatest films that I've ever seen. I love them, and I frequently watch them as a double bill. I know in the recent years, people have sort of gone like, Bride of Frankenstein actually isn't as good as everyone made out. It's a bit too camp. It's a bit too silly. Frankenstein the First is actually the better movie. No, I think Frankenstein, the original, is an absolute bona fide masterpiece, but I still always prefer Bride of Frankenstein because of the new elements that are brought in and the camp elements. It works for me. So Gods and Monsters is a great with Brandon Fraser from The Mummy. Is it Brandon Fraser? And Ian McSummin from Gandalf. I can't believe I've forgotten his name. And it's the last years of James Whale's life, and he falls in love with his gardener, played by Brendan Fraser. But it's a nice movie, and it captures a time slot of Hollywood. But people lump this film with that, but they're poles apart. They are nowhere near similar in style or attitude. This is a much more surreal exploration of what it takes to make a movie by going to the nth degree and hiring a monster to play a monster, but keeping that a secret from everyone else, and then realizing, shit, it's all gone completely wrong. We're going bankrupt. I'm losing cast and crew because he's killing everybody. Just like, what have I done? And the thing about Albin Grau and doing his occult symbols, there's two great scenes in Shadow of the Vampire, where Hutter, Eddie Izzard, is giving the contract, to buy the house to Count Orlok, and he's got that little crazy sort of like tea cozy hat on, and and he's reading this thing, but you can quite clearly see it's full of symbols, and like Willem Dafoe just goes like, "What is this? What is this? I don't understand this," because it's all symbolism. And then later on, when John Malkovich, who's now taking drugs or lauding them, because he's, oh god, we're stuck on the island and I've fucked up here. My crew are being killed and I've hired a monster. Oh god, what have I done? And but in his room, all over the walls, you've got all these symbols. There's even a swastika there as well. There's a swastika and other symbols are there on that wall. But it adds another degree of another element of this esoteric weirdness, which is permeating the entire movie. The film itself, it is a horror film. It is not a comedy. I've heard people call it a comedy. It's not. It's a dark, fable-like satire. Because we're always trying to pigeonhole things. It is a horror film. but it's not that horrific. There's hardly any gore. Well, there just isn't any gore in it, I don't think, apart from the slitting of the thumb when Hutter, Eddie Izzard's cutting the bread. All of that stuff. But there's no fountains of gore. There's not like that. There's no real biting taking place. But it is eerie. One of the eeriest scenes again captures the shadow of Max Schrek, his hand on the wall and all that, and he's creeping up the stairs. But he's going round the hotel, the guest house where all the cast and crew and where Greta is. He wants Greta, Catherine McCormack, and but he can't open the doors. And some of the other crew members do find him. Are you all right? Yes. Well, yeah, just your room's down here, and he's like, oh, it's like shit. I just want to bite Greta's neck. But Willem Dafoe is having a ball playing this, and you know that Robert Eggers, The Witch, The Lighthouse, and Willem Dafoe is in The Lighthouse. He's also in The Northman, which is forthcoming at the moment. At the time of this, I'll be seeing The Northman in a few days' time, and I'll be reporting back on that. The big Viking revenge saga. Willem Dafoe's in that. Robert Eggers has directed it. Robert Eggers has long wanted to remake Nosferatu, and everyone is like, look, if you're going to do this, you need to have Willem Dafoe, because he's the only person in today's world that can portray Count Orlok, because he's done it already and he's perfect for it. He doesn't even need that much makeup. So let's hope that happens. But even if it doesn't come to pass, Willem Dafoe has already nailed Max Schrek. Staked Max Schrek, you could say. And it is a wonderful performance. As I say, Oscar nominated as well. I love this movie. I think it's very badly flawed. I think it could have been something else. It sets its stall out and yet doesn't put all of the goods out on the stall, if you know what I mean. It brings you in. It's enticing, but it doesn't really deliver all the magnificence that you really think you should be getting, which is a shame. But it is his vision. I've always thought that there's a longer version of this, which of course there's going to be. By the way, we're playing the exquisite and stately score for the movie by I've forgotten the guy's name who composed the music. Dan Jones. That's it, Dan Jones. And it's lovely. It's very string led. It's very chamber music sort of style. Not really a lot of horror to it, but it's sweet and delicate and atmospheric and kind of brooding as well. But it fits the movie. And as I say, it's a great acting tour de force of some of the most bizarre, out there characters. Let's be honest, Willem Dafoe, crazy dude. John Malkovich, crazy dude. Who produced this? Nick Cage, the craziest of crazy dudes ever. And you've got Ezzy Eddard in there as well. Well, and who don't care? Christ, if you've got any interest in out there avant-garde cinema and genre horror cinema, you need to see this. Oh, it's not there. For some reason, I thought I put the whiskey down on the floor. I didn't. It was above me. Anyway, folks, cheers, y'all. I think it's a great film. I really do enjoy it. Get a right good kick out of it. But I understand when people go like, yeah, you know what? It doesn't really deliver. It's not a horror film. It's more of I don't know. It's a drama. It's a comedy drama, but it's got loads of great elements. Sumptuous camera work, lovely soundtrack, exquisite performances, and it does not stay its welcome. At barely 90 minutes, you're getting like this dissection of what it took back in those days to try and get a movie like this off the ground. So it's focused on movie making. It's a cineast's dream or nightmare, and whether you want to look at it from whichever perspective. But folks, Shadow of the Vampire, not the title they were going to go with, by the way. I'm not even sure what the title they originally wanted was going to be, but that was not what they were going to go with, but apparently that's what they ended up going with. And it works fine. Nosferatu is built on shadows and he's a vampire, so I think it works great. Anyway, folks, I'm sure there's more I can mention about this, but I've gone on long enough. So, in the meantime, and this ever, grave robbing, neck chomping, shadow playing in between time, please keep it Celtic, keep it Celtic. Be happy, and if you're making movies about monsters, it's probably best not to employ a monster. Really, you can't control them, Mind you, do they have any sort of rights? Are they part of a union? I don't know. Maybe you could use and abuse them. I don't know. Anyway, folks, I'm going to see you all later. You monster! You cannot eat my crew!